Secretary Cardona, you supported student vaccine mandates for COVID. Here's an article from Politico, September 23rd, 2021. Education Secretary backs mandatory school COVID-19 vaccines. You're quoted in that article saying, not only do we support it, but I'm encouraging states to come up with a plan to make sure it happens. You also said governors should work with their school officials and with their health officials to roll out requirements. Now, you made these statements in your capacity as Secretary of Education. Is it fair to say that this was the policy of the Biden administration, was student vaccine mandates?
Yeah, at the time of the article that you're referencing, we had the majority of our schools closed for full-time instruction. Our students were suffering, and it was the recommendation of our health experts.
So yes, this was the policy of the Biden administration, was to favor student vaccine mandates.
It was a recommendation of our health officials, not only at the federal level, but at the state and local level also, to in local districts to have students vaccinated.
So I'll take that as a yes. It was administration policy to favor student vaccine mandates, since you have not denied
There was not
statement.
a federal mandate on student vaccines.
Correct, but you encouraged states to adopt them.
I encouraged reopening schools, and
you encouraged states to adopt student vaccine mandates, yes or no?
Can you repeat the question?
Did you encourage states to adopt student vaccine mandates, yes or no?
I did not encourage states to adopt student vaccine mandates. Where states...
Excuse me, sir, you said right here, not only do I support it, but I'm encouraging states to come up with a plan to make sure it happens. The title of the article is Education Secretary Backs Mandatory School COVID-19 Mandates.
Sir, you could read the article, or you could talk to the person that was in that position then. I supported schools reopening, and in local districts where they were having vaccine mandates, I supported the decision made by the local.
So I guess Politico misquoted you. Is there any, did any states adopt that position, by the way? Did any states adopt student vaccine mandates and implement them?
To my knowledge, no states adopted
So it seems like kind of a fringe position that you offered, if not a single state agreed with it. Another fringe position that you adopted was favoring mask mandates for young children and making them wear masks throughout the school day. This was outside the international norm. Most countries in Europe did not do that, yet you insisted that this was backed by science. Mr. Secretary, did you ever fabricate or mischaracterize scientific evidence in order to support student mask mandates?
Absolutely not. What I did was lead the country to go from 46% school reopened to 98%.
We'll get to that in a moment. Here's an article from the National Review. Researcher corrects Secretary of Education after he cites her study to justify school mask mandates. If you want to go to the primary source, here's a tweet from you. This is from September 27th, 2021. It says a Wisconsin study found that schools that required masking had a 37% lower incidence of COVID-19. There's a comment from Dr. Tracy Hogue, who says, Secretary Cardona, I was the senior author of this study. Our study is not able to give any information about the role masks played in the observed low in-school transmission rate. So I'll ask you again, Mr. Secretary, did you ever fabricate or mischaracterize scientific evidence in order to justify student mask mandates?
No. What I supported were common sense mitigation strategies that protected students, our educators, and families as we reopened school in the height of a pandemic, and we were able to successfully do that.
Well, what you also did was call out governors who did not want to have mask mandates. This is from the Washington Post. Education Secretary Cardona criticizes Republican governors for banning mask mandates. Why did you feel like it was necessary to criticize these governors for their decisions?
I felt it was important to communicate the importance of superintendents and health officials making the decisions, not state governors preventing health experts from having their voice heard.
So let's then move on to the topic of school reopenings. The states that you decided to criticize, this is a chart of in-person instruction index for the 2021 school year from Burbio. The states you chose to criticize, Florida is near the best, nearly 100%. Texas is in 8th place. The bottom 5 states were Hawaii, Washington, Maryland, Oregon, and California. Did you ever criticize the governors of those states for refusing to open schools?
Can you tell me what that chart is? I'm
it's
not
from
sure
Burbio. It's been widely cited in the media.
What does the top say, though? The font is very small.
Average in-person instruction index. How much were schools open?
Okay. And what is your question?
Did you ever criticize the governors at the right end of these charts for not opening schools?
What are the right...
California, Oregon, Maryland, Washington, Hawaii.
I provided guidance regardless of whether the governors were Republican or Democrat on reopening schools.
Yes, but you specifically criticized the governors of Florida and Texas for not wanting to force masks on young children. Did you in the same way criticize the governor of California for not opening schools?
I was very critical of governors firing superintendents whose job was to protect students and families.
Did you criticize Governor Newsom for not opening schools?
Again, I was very critical of governors who were overstepping and removing.
I did not hear a yes.
educators.
I'm sorry. We've been listening to you evade yes or no answers all day. The reality is, I would encourage you to sort of look at what happened in our state of California. Parents were absolutely beside themselves as schools were functioning just fine in other states, yet our politicians refused to open them, and you never spoke out on the side of those parents and criticized those politicians. This was the most consequential policy failure in modern U.S. history, and I'm afraid to say it, Mr. Secretary, but you and this administration were complicit. I yield back.